The Roman military was one of the largest pre-modern professional armies that ever existed, protecting over 7,000 kilometers of border and consisting of over 400,000 legionaries and auxiliaries. The army was perhaps the most important institution in the Roman world. Often, this statement is contextualized around its defensive and offensive wars. However, we should remember that this institution had perhaps a far larger impact just by its very existence. After all, the Roman army was among the largest employers of its age and represented the single greatest line item in the imperial budget. So today, let us step inside this ancient military-industrial complex to see what it was like for a soldier to earn a living and make a career in the Roman legions, from raw recruit to senior centurion.
The reenactment footage for this video was provided by the team at Imperium Romanum. They are a fantastic reenactment group based out of the actual Rhine frontier, who produce in-depth documentaries on both military and civilian life. Their content is highly educational and extremely well produced, with videos that put Hollywood to shame and are the best we've seen of this kind. Be sure to check out their YouTube channel linked in the description below and give them some support. Today's video was sponsored by Manscaped.com. Now, you've probably heard about them before when it comes to trimmers for your as well as hygiene formulations and premium boxers, but now they've launched a new product line meant to make beard trimming and styling much easier thanks to the Beard Hedger Pro Kit. And by easy, I mean easy. First of all, the Beard Hedger Pro is powered by a 7200 RPM motor and titanium-coated T-blade that can cut through the thickest hair in a single stroke. Second, it's waterproof, cordless, and rechargeable, which lets me trim in the shower for easy cleaning when I'm in a rush. And finally, they've gotten rid of those annoying guards by offering an all-in-one guard solution that adjusts to 20 different lengths with a simple zoom wheel. Whether you're lucky enough to be grooming a lion's mane, or if you're like me and prefer a 5 o'clock shadow, they've got you covered. And in case you do want to use the Beard Hedger for your they've got a designated lawnmower trimmer. The rest of the Beard Hedger Pro Kit comes with a ton of other awesome products, including beard shampoo, conditioner, oil, balm, a travel case, and a free gift of beard accessories, including a brush, comb, and scissors. You can get all this by simply going to manscaped.com today and get 20% off plus free shipping when you use the promo code Invicta at checkout. That's 20% off plus free international shipping with the promo code Invicta at manscaped.com. So join over 8 million men who trust Manscaped today and enjoy.
In the early years of the Roman army, the legions were a levied militia force with neither a robust system of formalized pay nor promotion. In terms of pay, this largely came down to collecting spoils whilst on campaign. In terms of promotion, a legionary's rank in a given year's levy was based on their socio-economic status, with officers generally being selected by the elected magistrates. Such a system worked well enough at first, but soon began to strain as the scope, distance, and duration of Rome's wars increased over the years. Livy claims that basic pay for campaign expenses was first introduced during the siege of Veii in the 4th century BC, while Polybius tells us that by the middle 2nd century BC, common soldiers received 2 obols a day, centurions received 4 obols a day, and cavalrymen received 1 drachma a day. The exact value of this pay is uncertain, but what is clear is that it was still far below a living wage. By the late Republic, a variety of factors led to an evolution in the Roman army's systems of pay and promotion. This was largely spearheaded by the Marian reforms, which standardized many aspects of the legions, whilst shifting the responsibility of supplying and managing an army to its general. This paved the way for rich, powerful, and ambitious politicians to now build their own loyalist armies, who could be bent to their cause using the leverage of pay and promotion. For instance, Caesar famously doubled the base pay of his soldiers to 225 denarii a year, while elevating all who proved themselves in the line of duty. Yet, with each commander acting as he pleased, this was not a long-term solution. When Augustus finally emerged victorious from the civil wars, he would see fit to standardize this system. Thus, as Republic turned to Empire, we finally see the emergence of Rome's professional army. It is this force's pay and promotion which we shall cover today. Understandably, both concepts are intertwined. For the sake of simplicity, we shall discuss each in turn, starting with pay. When men in the imperial periods joined the Roman army, they were given a signing bonus of 3 gold coins, the rough equivalent of about 4 months' salary. But such pay did not come freely, as new recruits would also be obligated to swear the military oath to faithfully execute the emperor's commands, to never desert the service, and to never avoid death for the Roman state. Following this exchange of life for gold, soldiers would now be officially enrolled in the legionary ledgers and become eligible to receive their annual pay. During the reign of Augustus, this was set at Caesar's established rate of 225 denarii a year, which would be paid out in 3 stipendia of 75 denarii at each 4-month interval. Foot auxilia received about 33% this amount, cavalrymen received about 100%, city cohorts received 160%, and praetorians received about 300%. Over the years, these values would gradually evolve. For instance, at the end of the 1st century AD, Domitian would effectively increase salaries across the board by 33% by adding a 4th stipendium. In the late 2nd century, Commodus would add a 5th stipendium, while in the early 3rd century, Septimius Severus would increase the size of each stipendia. In addition to these base salaries, soldiers would also benefit from bonuses. These were initially ad hoc incentive programs meant to boost the morale and loyalty of the troops. However, in later years, such donatives, as they were known, became quite regular occurrences which accompanied the ascension of a new emperor. This was especially true of the praetorians, whose loyalty was most important to secure. As a point of reference, while Augustus would pay each soldier 75 denarii, or 1/3 a year's salary upon his death, Claudius would pay his praetorians 3,750 denarii, or almost 8 years' worth of their already elevated salary. Specialists and officers within these various units could expect to receive many times the base rate of a regular soldier. Centurions, for instance, are believed to have been paid around 5 times as much, while the primus ordo earned 10 times and a primus pilus earned 20 times. But one might wonder, how did this money actually make its way from the government's treasury to the soldier's purse? In Rome's early history, a central treasury, or aerarium, was located within the city itself, which served as the source for all funding, including military expenditures. However, such a system proved impractical as the state expanded, and by the time of the late Republic, the treasury functioned more as a clearinghouse, which kept records of Rome's financial balance sheet. In the imperial era, the emperors, under whose authority most public money was spent, came to use their own treasury for the receipt and disbursement of funds without accounting to the aerarium. It was from this financial well that the legions were paid. Emperor Augustus even had a specific treasury established called the Aerarium Militari, which was meant to pay for veteran pensions and land grants. However, as had occurred before, it proved impractical to first centralize money and then redisperse it. Thus, legionary funds often came from the mints themselves. This was a convenient arrangement, as armed forces were needed to guard these facilities anyway, and to exert control over the mineral-rich provinces in which they were often located. From the mint, money would likely have been loaded onto pay wagons and escorted to the legionary headquarters or the various fortresses of its detachments. In such structures, we have evidence that strong rooms existed, which could act as both banks and pay offices. When on the move, a unit might bring these funds with them in sturdy war chests. In either case, when payday came, the soldiers would have eagerly lined up to receive their stipendia. So, what might they do with this money? Generally speaking, soldiers were not known for their financial wisdom, and throughout history, men of this profession have had a reputation for gambling, frivolity, and going broke from their own poor decisions. In the Roman army, though, a lack of money might not even be a soldier's fault. While they were paid regularly and consistently throughout the eras, that paycheck was generally a bit lighter than advertised. This was a result of deductions for just about everything, from rations to clothing, weapons, armor, and repairs. Modern estimates are that, all told, these expenses would drain about a third of a soldier's pay. Beyond this, there would have been additional expenses incurred from a soldier's other obligations. For instance, a soldier's family might ask him for money to support themselves in a rough patch. One more expense that often goes unmentioned is the communal fund that was set up by the tent mates of a contubernum. This group of 8 men would be the most closely knit unit in the Roman army. They lived, ate, slept, and fought together. As a result, it was common practice for them to organize an informal bank among themselves, with each man contributing a couple of coins from each paycheck. One of this small hoard's most important purposes was to serve as a death insurance policy. If one of them should die, the others would be obligated to pay for his expenses and for his surviving family. Incidentally, during the period of time when Roman soldiers were forbidden to take a wife, this would mean that the contubernum would take care of the soldier's widow and children, whom the Roman state would emphatically not consider to be legally allowed to be in a soldier's will. After all these deductions and obligations, what little remained of a soldier's pay was quickly spent. They were human after all, and wished to live their life beyond the drudgery of soldiering. This meant going to the local taberna with friends, getting their clothes washed by a local camp follower, buying gifts, splurging on food, drink, and spices, or finding a prostitute for the night. Yet, one might ask, was it worth it to put one's life on the line for such seemingly meager gains? After all, a basic laborer in Rome could expect to receive double the rate of pay of your average soldier. That being said, the money wasn't half bad for many provinces outside of Italy. Cost of living was higher in the capital of the empire than elsewhere. And while the currency was standardized, its purchasing power wasn't. Even counting the deductions, a Roman soldier could expect to take home around 2 sestertii per day. That was more than the same man could make as a Dacian miner or an African fisherman. But perhaps most importantly, the money was steady. There was no question of job insecurity, no concern of the consequences of a poor catch or harvest. Many professions in the ancient world seem to have been either irregular or seasonal, with construction workers and farm laborers being hired as needed. For a soldier, though, they could count on a steady paycheck their entire career, with bonuses along the way and a nice pension at the end. That was a pretty excellent deal in the ancient world. Beyond the money, there were also the rewards for a man and his family. If he wasn't a citizen, his service in the army would guarantee citizenship for himself and his descendants. they would be afforded rights that were coveted across the ancient world, which would give them a form of social stability that could last for 100 years. This was a reward that couldn't be put into simple financial figures. A person's family was more than just people who were related. They were strands of the same soul, tangible proof of a person's legacy who would carry his memory through time. All in all, hundreds of thousands of men saw the Roman army as a good opportunity for themselves and their family, a unique opportunity that the empire offered. Now that we have covered a soldier's pay, we can cover his promotion. In this regard, the Roman army of the empire had a rather strict hierarchy of ranks with various grades of pay which accompanied them. In theory, one could ascend up this ladder over the course of a long career. In practice, however, evidence does not support the idea that regular soldiers enjoyed much advancement, especially in contrast to their officers. That's not to say that a regular legionary would be at the grunt level forever. An exceptionally capable man, for example, might be promoted to an immunis, a specialized soldier who earned both higher pay and exemption from more mundane and unwanted tasks. Some of their roles included work as field medics, carpenters, and engineers. Alternatively, a soldier might fill a more unique role within his unit, such as becoming its standard bearer, trumpeter, trainer. Every so often, a man might be able to be promoted to the rank of optio, the immediate subordinate to a centurion, and from there to the rank of centurion itself. Yet again, we should mention that this appears to have been a rare event. In fact, we actually have a rather poor understanding of how one came to be a centurion. During the Republican era, these men seem to have been chosen by lot from the men of their unit. As for the practice of the early empire, Vegetius, a writer from the 5th century AD, provides one of our only explicit descriptions. Quote, "The centurion in the infantry is chosen for his size, strength, and dexterity in throwing his missile weapons, and for his skill in the use of his sword and shield. In short, for his expertness in all the exercises. He is to be vigilant, temperate, active, and readier to execute the orders he receives than to talk. Strict in exercising and keeping up proper discipline among his soldiers, in obliging them to appear clean and well-dressed, and to have their weapons constantly rubbed and bright." Yet, while this passage might make it seem as though the best of the best soldiers would be plucked for promotion, the rank of centurion would probably be reserved for people who already had the money and status to be noticed by the army's higher-ups. After all, social advancement in ancient Rome heavily relied on one's social network. There was also the fact that the duties of a centurion required administrative skills that were simply more prevalent amongst the elite. They had to be able to read and write fluently, manage unit logistics, oversee construction, and interface with much of the administrative tasks of the army. But that isn't to say they were mere pencil pushers. Centurions were expected to lead from the front by example, and as a result, casualties among their ranks were disproportionately high compared to an average infantryman. But those who survived and did their job well could be expected to gradually slide up the ranks. Within each cohort, there were 6 centurions, the lowest being the hastatus posterior, and the highest being the pilus prior. Within the legion, the centuries were also ranked in seniority from 10th to 1st. The first centurion of the first cohort, known as the primus pilus, would be the most senior centurion of the legion and would serve as a direct advisor to the commander himself. Reaching such a post would be the culmination of a long and distinguished career. The ranks beyond those of the centurionate were often on an entirely different track. hailing from the class of citizens already near the top of Rome's social ladder. For instance, the equestrian class, or those who had a worth of at least 250,000 denarii, were exclusively hand-selected to be the primary officers of the army. Every auxiliary regiment had a citizen officer from this class, while the military tribunes of the legions were also equestrian. These men could expect a standard career path of promotion. For their first few years, they would command a regiment of auxiliary infantry. The next few years would be spent as a military tribune, leading to their final promotion to the head of a company of cavalry. As for the commanders of armies themselves, these men were very often emperors, their close associates, or hand-picked favorites of either of these. Yet for every system of promotion we have attempted to lay out, there were likely many exceptions and deviations over the course of the Roman army's long history. In this spirit, there are many records from military gravestones and letters which proudly boast of the unique and inspiring careers within the legions. Sadly, we will not be able to cover them all today. However, there is one account recorded by Livy from the Middle Republican period whose story serves as an inspiration for all those who dreamed of rising to great heights from humble beginnings. His account goes as follows, quote, "I joined the army in the consulship of Publius Sulpicius and Gaius Aurelius Cotta, and I served 2 years in the ranks in the army which was taken across to Macedonia in the campaign against King Philip. In the 3rd year, Titus Quinctius Flamininus promoted me for my bravery to be centurion of the 10th maniple of Hastati. After the defeat of King Philip and the Macedonians, when we'd been brought back to Italy and demobilized, I immediately left for Spain as a volunteer with the consul Marcus Porcius. Of all the living generals, none has been a keener observer and judge of bravery than he, as is well known to those who, through long military service, have had experience of him and other commanders. This general judged me worthy to be appointed centurion of the 1st century of Hastati. I enlisted for the 3rd time, again as a volunteer, in the army sent against the Aetolians and King Antiochus. Manius Achillius appointed me centurion of the 1st century of the Principes. When King Antiochus had been driven out and the Aetolians had been crushed, we were brought back to Italy. And twice after that I took part in campaigns in which the legions served for a year. Thereafter, I saw 2 campaigns in Spain, one with Quintus Fulvius Flaccus as praetor, the other with Tiberius Sempronius Gracchus in command. I was brought back home by Flaccus with others whom he brought back with him from the province for his triumph on account of their bravery. And I returned to Spain because I was asked to do so by Tiberius Gracchus. 4 times in the course of a few years, I held the rank of chief centurion. 34 times I was rewarded for bravery by the generals. I have been given 6 civic crowns. I have completed 22 years of service in the army, and I am now over 50 years old. I hope you've appreciated this look at what pay and promotion was like for a Roman soldier during their service in the legions. Let us know what topics you'd like to see us cover next, and be sure to head over to Imperium Romanum's channel, where you can catch more of their awesome reenactment videos. A big thanks is also owed to our patrons for funding the channel. Consider joining to vote in polls, to catch script previews, and to download all our art. And finally, a shout out is needed for the researchers and writers for making this episode possible. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content, and check out these other related episodes. See you in the next one.